What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Grab Your Torch with Caleb and Joel. We are here just a week
Hello.
after the 48 finale to talk about season 50. And we just got a cast this morning officially. We've seen the spoilers that it got released, I believe yesterday, like the full cast,
hmm
by Redmond, and it turned out to be the correct list. And yeah, from what we've seen, this is kind of crazy. I think there's a lot of shockers on the cast. And then there's also a lot of like, okay, of course, and that makes sense. We're excited to see them back. And it's definitely, you know, it's interesting because we have a full celebration of all 50 seasons, even up to 49. And we also have no people from Winners at War returning on, season 50 as well. So I think that helps a little bit just because we get to see a wider net. We get to see players that we haven't seen in a long time. If I think the latest person who's actually been on a returning season was Aubrey and Edge of Extinction. So like since
Yeah,
then, we haven't had any returning seasons outside of Winners, and it was just Aubrey on Edge of Extinction that's returning here. So that'll be interesting to watch her return. We'll get into each of the players individually, but just wanted to see what your thoughts were on this cast overall. 24 people.
I know. Biggest cast in U.S. Survivor history, which I am excited for. Don't know how the days are going to work, but luckily that's not my issue. I will say that I think this cast legacy-wise could be like looked back upon as like, oh my gosh, like how did this happen? Where we've been kind of flocking for a new era's all-star and everything. But I do think this is a chance for a lot of these guys to really cement their legacy. And I do think it is very tip forward into the new era, like because they played in this format, they know how it works. We already have two winners and multiple people who made it to the end. And so I think it is tipped in their favor, but it's hard to deny like how good like a lot of this old school cast is. I know super fans, including myself, wanted people like Jerry, wanted people like Rob, but I can't lie that like these are still really good picks. Like even though Ozzy's on the cast, it's like it's still Ozzy. For like better or worse, he is the greatest challenge competitor of all time, and he brings a level of intensity. He is going to be like the person every other one of these challenge beasts are going to try to be. So I do really like the cast. I would give it like a 7 out of 10, honestly.
Yeah,
Anyone who's
better
like
than
this is
Game Changers.
oh
Better,
yeah, like
better than Karamoan.
they really couldn't mess up this cast. Like even if you don't like the picks, it's still like, yeah, there's a reason they're here. Like we talked about it before, but like none of these people have gotten under eighth place.
Eighth
Like
place in their first time playing.
on their first time playing. Yeah.
And
So
that's Tiffany. And then there's quite a few like seventh placers, but
yeah, but like I think this is a great cast, incredible characters, which is what I'm excited for. Do I think this will be the greatest strategic season of all time? No. But I think it's going to be a really fun season. And that's why I really like the cast personally.
yeah, I agree. I think we have a lot of people that are just like there strictly for entertainment reasons,
Oh yeah.
and chaos, which is helpful for any season. As a big fan of season 46, I think it's my favorite season of New Era. I'm not sure if I'm still there, hit me back in a couple years when I rewatch all of them and see where I think. But I think 46 is still my favorite, so I just love the chaos. And we also have like because we have the most chaotic player of that season, Q, on this. We have Coach, who's insane. We have Angelina, who is going to be up to whatever shenanigans, stealing jackets left and right, or at least asking for them. And
Yeah.
then we have some crazy, like, not just unknown quantities, like with the season 49 cast members. We'll see. Like from what we've seen, Rizzo seems like a crazy guy. So we'll see if that pans out in season 49. I hope that season will be entertaining, and I do think that they were cast partly just because they didn't want that season to be so overshadowed that no one would watch it, and just like, all right, I'll just wait
Wow.
until 50 comes out. So I think in that way it's going to help like viewership because people are want to kind of see how which players make it on to 50, even though if you look deep into it you can find who they are spoiled wise, um, which are Rizzo and Savannah, but spoiler
Yes.
spoiler alert. But those are the spoilered members of the cast. Um, so we'll see how they do on season 49. I'm sure they'll probably do pretty well, given the fact that, everyone else is eighth place or like at the lowest. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. We also have 12 new era people and 12 people before the new era. So I think that's an interesting divide. I don't know if they'll end up doing like old school versus new era kind of thing. I doubt it. I think they will want the players to interact with each other. So I
Mhm.
think that will be an interesting dynamic. And who knows, we'll probably get three tribes based on like the buff colors that we voted on. Three tribes of eight, which I think is better than, three tribes of six. I feel like there's a lot
A
more,
lot
a lot
better.
better. And so I think that will be more fun to watch, even though we've done three tribes for a while now. I do think in the swap, which I'm pretty sure that's going to be a yes with the in the hands of the fans. I think that will end up possibly being a swap into, two tribes. Who knows? But we'll see. Sorry.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Um, yes, I agree. I think it'll be an interesting, especially since I think most of them are under the impression that there's not going to be fire making. I think most of them might have a pretty good read on like what's actually going to happen in the voting, because a lot of it seems pretty lopsided. But there's people like Colby who probably even know people are voting on this, and people like Ozzy. So you never know. And I do think this will be a very interesting season out of the sheer fact that like there's so many like relationships already established. Colby and Stephanie, Suri and Ozzy, Ozzy and Coach. There's a lot of different things that you wouldn't even necessarily think about, which I think is very fun. But I think we should go through one by one, give us our thoughts, maybe if we like him or not. And I think at the very end of the episode, we'll give our initial winner picks way too early, but
Way too early winner picks. We can do that for
yes.
sure. I think okay, we can start at first. We had Jeff get to announce all these this morning, which was fun to watch. I didn't watch it at the time. I didn't watch it live. I woke up early to like confirm that the Redmond cast was correct, and then I went back to bed. Um, so that's what ended up happening. I ended up going back and watching the video though of him revealing all the cast members. So first off, we have from very first season Survivor Borneo, we have Jenna Lewis.
Yes, Jenna Lewis. I think they needed Borneo representation like pretty badly. And from what I can tell, Jenna is actually like pretty locked in on Survivor. Like she's very aware of the new era, been watching it, very like has definitely evolved her game. And I think she's a very interesting casting choice because I don't really like care about her in Borneo. She was part of the Begonging. That's a very interesting representation for this tribe and this cast. But I think more specifically, she was on All Stars and she really led the way of like setting the tone that like winners need to go out. And I think specifically like she was the third to Boston Rob and Amber, which, Jeff, if Boston Rob's involved, that's a good thing for you because that guy loves Boston Rob. But I think Jenna Lewis will actually be probably out of the old school one of the more strategic, funny enough, in my eyes. Do I think she's gonna win? I don't know. I think the level of prestige of this cast is kind of hard for a lot of these like under the radar people to eventually overcome. But if she just goes in, she's like, "We need to take out D. We need to take out Kyle." Like that would be funny.
Yeah.
And I think she probably will add like a very good layer of like spice to this season. But what do
Yeah.
you think?
I think she will bring a lot more entertainment than someone like a Kelly Wigglesworth, which I think, Wigglesworth was great to bring back in, second chances, just because of her being the first runner up, having all that in there. But I think Jenna will bring a lot more entertainment because of the stuff we talked about from her on All Stars. She went really far. She made it to third place, I believe.
Yep.
And she also like I think she could bring an interesting dynamic. I thought they had to cast someone from Borneo. I think the rumors there for a while, like the four people kind of in the mix, or I guess only three were like Greg, which is always thrown out in every returnee season, which he's never going to return. Um,
Mm.
but for some reason his name's always out there because he never says yes to it. Um, and then Jervis was also in the rumors as well. And then Jenna as well, which Jenna ends up making it on. And I think she's probably the best out of the three because we haven't seen her the longest. I mean, Jervis would have been fun to watch too, just because it's Jervis. But I think, Jenna coming to play, I think she'll bring an interesting dynamic just being from the first season. And she's not even the oldest player. She's
At
actually,
all.
like, there's quite a few people that are older than her on this season. She hasn't played in 21 years, but she was only, 26 when she played All Stars, so something like that. Um, and so she has, a lot of experience under her belt. There's players today that are, older than Jenna, like Gabler. He won. He's older than Jenna.
Yeah.
He played very recently. So. I think I'm excited to see what she will do. And if that, anti-winner streak continues with the two winners that are cast on the season, potentially three, but we'll see.
Yeah, 100%. Now, moving on to the Australian Outback. We have the original Golden Boy. We have Colby Donaldson, the man who originally set the immunity record, a man who America fell in love with. Um, got second place, returned for All Stars, did not do very well. Then returned again for Heroes versus Villains and was the last hero standing after a very up and down season. I personally really like Colby on Heroes versus Villains. I think it was such an interesting thing to see him just be like, honestly, a little overwhelmed by the prestige of the cast
Yeah.
and just the pace of the game. And now seeing him here, it's going to be really, really interesting as I do think he has something to prove where I don't think in Heroes vs. Villains he was all the way like in the game. Where here, I think if he's coming back, it's because he's like, it's only 26 days. I can do this. And I really want to show something, a different aspect of myself. So I'm personally very excited, but what about you?
I'm excited to see Colby return. I think I'm a lot higher on Colby than some other people.
Mhm.
I think, who knows how much Survivor he's watched, since he's played. Probably not very much, if I had to guess. And so I think, kind of being an outsider looking in on the new era coming into season 50. I think it'll be interesting to watch. And I'll be curious to see like if he aligns with someone like a Joe that is, big on creating an alliance and moving forward in the game, or if he's gonna try to like switch it up and, have a game, try to play hard, or if he'll just take it out super early because of his, legend status. Um, I have no idea what to expect from Colby. And I think that's really exciting.
I agree. And I think one thing that I've been thinking about a lot with Colby, because I agree, I'm a lot higher than I think the general consensus, is that Colby voted out Suri, and the only time where she's been really purely voted out in American Survivor is like one of the craziest like vote split with an idol, which, I wouldn't 100% credit Colby with that. But like it is an incredibly impressive move. And a relationship I am curious to see. And I think he's more insulated relationally than like you would first think about, like Jenna, Suri. I think Stephanie, him on Heroes vs. Villains, those two were aligned. So I don't think he's like coming into this just like, you know, absolutely out in the ocean, just no allies at all. But I do think he's gonna go deeper than most people think.
Yeah, I think he has the chance to go deep, and I think that'll just be entertaining. Just because of he's a great confessional giver. From what we've seen, he's created a lot of reality TV shows and stuff, and done a lot since then. So he's definitely, good for the camera. He's able to, just bring himself and his personality. I think, it'll be really fun to watch. So moving on to season 10, we have Stephanie LaGrossa Kendrick coming back for the first time since Heroes versus Villains as well, but she was out pretty early in Heroes versus Villains. And so it's basically her first time coming back since like, Guatemala. So it'll be curious to see how she plays coming back.
I completely agree. She had such an interesting arc in her first two seasons of being like, Colby Donaldson was a huge deal for America. Stephanie was like arguably a bigger deal. Like her being the final member of Oolong and like going on to this massive villain arc in Guatemala was such an interesting ride where, another second place person. And I do like that the prestige of this cast is like a bunch of people who've gotten to the end. They know how to do it. And so I think Stephanie is a very interesting case in my eyes. I don't really know what her path to a win is because I think realistically she probably might just like latch onto someone and have to be a duo, which there's a lot of people in this game that use duos to get to the end. So I think that's a good thing. But I think prestige wise, it's really cool. She's been on Traders, she's been on Snake in the Grass. I haven't seen either of those. I don't know how she does,
Yeah.
but at least she's like in the public eye. I know she played with Suri both times, so I assume they're allies, maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I could see them being allies going forward.
But I do think this is a really great casting choice. It's also really fun to say goodbye to her because we didn't really get a very satisfying ending to her story in Heroes versus Villains, as she kind of whimpered out at the end with her hurt shoulder. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think she's just a great legend to bring back. She's kind of a no-brainer. I think I'm glad to see her back on this cast. I don't know how lost in the sauce she'll get or anything like that. I think she, has been doing these shows recently, kind of coming back into the limelight. I think, if she was going through this casting process for a while, she would have been preparing herself, watching a bunch of seasons of Survivor, getting caught up if she hasn't
Hmm.
seen it before. I think she's the type of person, to be savvy, um to change up her game from the past too and try to do something different. And I think we can see, a really interesting dynamic from Steph.
I completely agree. Now, moving on to a five-time, really six-time player of Survivor, we have Sari Fields. Caleb, tell me about this legend.
I mean, I think there's not enough to say. I don't have enough time to, say everything about Suri. She's, played, 4 seasons of Survivor. This will be her fifth season of American Survivor. She's, already played, a season of Australian Survivor. Who knows how she did there? She's done Big Brother. She won season one of The Traitors. She's done all these shows. And so she's just a really impressive character. And they keep bringing her back because they want her to win. Um, but she'll probably inevitably be screwed over by some stupid twist. We'll see what happens. Um, but I think, Sari, yeah, there's not enough to be said. I think she'll play hard. I think her threat level is going to be unimaginably high. She's probably the biggest threat out here. Um,
Easily.
yeah, possibly, probably. I would say yes. Um, so I think she'll have a really hard time managing her threat level. But she had a massive threat in Game Changers and made it all the way to Final Six, where she only got voted out because everyone else had some sort of advantage. So I think she is really good at undermining her throne threat level and being able to slide in there. If can she do it again? That's the question. And if these players are smart, they're not going to let Suri get to the end, because that would be their demise. So
I completely agree. Suri, obviously, I think everyone agreed the greatest player to never win. And I don't, I think when you look at this cast, it makes sense. Like, she is the name, in my opinion, to come back here. Even though we've seen her so much on Big Brother, on The Traitors, I think she's everywhere. But like, I think there's nothing quite like her returning to American Survivor. And I think specifically, one thing I love about Suri is like every time she's played, she's just pushed the game forward. From the 3-2-1 to stealing Eric's immunity to like it happening to her and advantage getting. Like even like we said, Colby's like three idol two like vote against her. Insane stuff always happens to her, or she's doing it to someone else. And I think she's probably the greatest strategic mind to ever play the game. I'm so excited for her to be here. I really hope she goes, if she wins this season, I mean, it can't be a bad season. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, it would be satisfying. It would be like, when Tony won, where you're like, yeah, it's like a so-so season if you looked at it, if like, I don't know, like Sarah Lucina won.
Yeah.
But like, the fact that Tony won boosts the season. And I think a lot of people on the season are like that.
Yeah, I think what would really help this season, especially with the cast of 24, we haven't heard exactly, hey, this season's gonna have 26 days. We've heard that's not gonna be 39. So I'm thinking that there's a offshoot chance that it could be like 30 days or something, but I doubt
Hmm.
it. Let's just assume that it's 26 days. Um, Going with that, 26 days, 24 players, that's crazy. I think there's going to be a lot of double boots. I think the best thing for Survivor to do is to have like 2 hour episodes, and instead of having 13 episodes in a season, having like 15 or
Yeah.
16, just so you can, stretch it out. I know the players themselves will not be, um, that stretched out. It'll be so tight because they'll have so many vote outs to do in such a quick time period. Um, but I hope that Survivor takes advantage of this and produces a mega season of Survivor so that we get to dwell on everything and not have the pacing issues that we had in Winners at War.
Oh, 100%. And I think moving on to the next person, Mr. Challenge Beast himself, the Jungle Boy, we have Ozzy, which, I think makes sense I think he's like the casual favorite. Like everyone know who Ozzy is. He is like the totem pole, like the number one guy when you think of like immunity challenges. You think of Ozzy. And especially on a season where multiple people have won 4 immunities or 5 immunities, like that's really cool to have someone like here on here. Now, do I think he adapted his strategy? Do I think he pushed it forward? I do think so. I do, but I do not think it's at the degree of anyone else. I don't know what his upside is, but I am very excited to see probably his end. I think Game Changers was kind of like a whimper to one of the greatest story arcs in Survivor. So I hope he gets to go out there, maybe win a few challenges, and maybe like sixth place or something. I don't
I
know.
know. Yeah, I hope Ozzy gets it into his character arc. I know there's, things outside of the game that are talked about with Ozzy that as people ask questions about, a little questionable. But I do think, Ozzy has the chance to play hard. He always, brings everything into the challenges. He's coming in as an older player. He's going to be 43, um, playing right now. I mean, the cast is on the plane right now. Like I think, like either like today or tomorrow, or something like that. And so getting to back to Fiji, seeing what happens. I'm really excited to see if Ozzy can bring something different. Really doubt there will be much different. I think he'll do the same kind of game that he's played. It'll be interesting to see his dynamics with coach and if that's changed at all, anything like that. But I enjoy Ozzy a lot. Just from a rootable perspective as like a challenge beast. He's gotten close to winning twice.
Yeah.
He could do it again. We'll see.
I agree. And that's the thing, I think generally the Survivor community was like, oh, Ozzy's not a good player. But I think we really underestimate the fact that like he would have won South Pacific, whatever that season is. Like he would have won in a landslide. It would not have been close against anyone.
Yeah.
And he lost his other season, he lost by one vote to one of the best winners ever. And I think he would have won Micronesia realistically if he somehow got to the end, but that was so far out, probably wouldn't have happened. But at the end of the day, like he knows how to get to the end. He gamed Redemption Island. He does have some strategic acumen to him. And I think if he can like latch onto someone who is strategic, I think there's a shot where like the roles reverse, where like back in the day, Yule was a strategist and he was the social physical guy. And now that might change where maybe Ozzy's social game finally wins him in his prestige. But moving on to someone who has so much prestige, arguably one of my favorite people on this whole cast, we have Coach Wade, a man, the myth, the legend. What
The
are your
Dragon
thoughts on
Slayer.
Coach?
Oh,
The Dragon Slayer.
I love Coach so much. He was one of my picks like going into 50. I'm like, okay, if they are going to bring back legends, they have to bring back Coach. His entertainment level is undeniable. I think he's going to bring it. Even with his trolling on social media the last few weeks, this has just been really fun to watch. I think he's, kind of joke around a lot. I can't believe he's going to be on a season with Hugh, like, something like that.
They have to put them together.
It's going to be crazy. But I think, Coach brings something outside of just like gameplay and strategy. He brings, his personality. He's just a crazy guy overall. And he also likes playing it up for the cameras, it's always really fun to watch. I think this is one of those knocked out of the park. Casting did a really good job bringing Coach back.
Oh, absolutely. I would say like him coming back is just like so fun for both casuals and super fans because let's face it, he like he also came really close to winning his season. And which is so weird to think about when you think about Coach, but we've seen him like be on some of the greatest seasons of Survivor ever. He's always brought it. He's always been himself. And I think this season's no different, where he knows this is his last run and he knows that he can get to the end. Does he win? I don't know, but I do think he's going to be entertaining no matter what. And I think when you look at this cast, you kind of compare like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe Christian and Coach are probably going to talk. You know what I mean? Like it's always kind of revolving around Coach, and I'm very excited. Do I think he can gonna win? I don't think so. But I really hope he gets like really far. Like,
I hope he
am I?
stays far so he can be on our screens as long
I
as
just want him.
possible.
Like, I just want him to make the finale. Like, if he makes the finale, I'm happy.
Yeah,
But
I
this is
agree.
what I think.
Good coach sentiment. I'm glad he's on. Moving on, we have a massive like 12 season jump. No players from the 20s in this cast at all.
No.
Moving on to Aubrey from Korong, which this one is one of the ones I was surprised by because I thought she was kind of done with Survivor, kind of off the train. I just rewatched Edge of Extinction and like, her arc in that season, like she got duped really early. Um, I think I'll be curious to see how she plays, coming back into another full returning season. I think from what I heard in the rumors that Amanda was in the running for a long time and either she dropped out or was cut and Aubrey stepped in her place kind of last minute. So if that's the case, that's going to be interesting just no matter what. Like Aubrey just jumping
Mhm.
back into the mix. Um, I'm curious to see how she adapts to like the new era gameplay. But I do think, strategically she's great. You know, Cube, voted out, someone just because they said they wanted to play like Aubrey. So um, I think,
Yeah.
having that dynamic on there too is really fun.
Oh, I completely agree. And honestly, there is like a part of casting that, like, I have no doubt in my mind, Aubrey and Q are going to be on the same tribe. And I think specifically with Aubrey, like looking at her as a character. I actually really like her. I think she's very interesting. I think she was honestly the main character of a lot of the 30s for me. Of like, she loses to Michelle, who became like, wasn't a popular winner then, but is like a very popular winner now. And I think she always kind of like going into Game Changers, people were like, oh, she thought she deserved it. She had a lot of hubris about her, which I don't really know if that's true. But I think her maybe getting some redemption here would be really fun. I do think she's a really good player. And I do think like the fact that she went from Co-Wrong to Game Changers and had two really deep runs was very impressive. And I think anyone returning on Edge of Extinction was just like so incredibly screwed, no matter
No matter
what.
what. Yeah.
So I don't really blame her, even though she got like very duped. But I think she's gonna be fun. I think her interactions are gonna be good. She's in a good spot. I don't know if she's been like, I know a lot of these players have been pre-gaming, and if she really did just get thrown in there, that might not be as good as she might not have those connections. But I do think she could definitely get a good runner. I mean, she's with Ozzy, with Suri. Um, I don't think anyone else she's with, but those are two people that have a lot of influence. And I think she was working with Suri, if I remember Game Changers, maybe for a little bit, but maybe Suri will protect her. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, moving on to we have a season 35 contestant, Chrissy Hoffbeck, which is one of the main stage of players that were kind of in that in between, game
Mhm.
changers and winners at war that really just never had a chance to come back. She's the first of these. And I think out of the groups, like if I had said like, the legends, this group of players and then like the new era players, I think they did the best casting this middle group that hadn't had a shot to come back yet. They just hit on the head all the people that we wanted to see back, and even with an extra surprise in there as well, which could have been someone else, but I'm glad that it was him. We'll get to that in a second. But with Chrissy, I think she was one of the robbed people for bringing in fire making originally. She was able to not be able to take up Ben. which caused him to win. But I think I'm curious to see how she plays, and she'll have that same effect this season. She doesn't know if there's going to be fire making or not this season because of the fan vote. So that same dynamic's still here in this season for 50, and I think she'll bring it. She's one of my probably potential winner picks. Like just thinking about it right now. I think she's I don't know. I don't know if she'll come in with as big of a threat level. I think she's like in that middle group where she's not like one of these super new era players that are hot and heavy on people's minds that will be big threats, and these legends that are also going to be big threats. Um, so I think Chrissy can play a really great game here. I'm excited to see what she does.
I completely agree, and I really like Chrissy on this cast. I think she is in a good spot of like being the only 35. Like you said, she's kind of in that Goldilocks zone, and she's a like very physical player, a very aggressive player. I actually really love her confessional. She's like honestly a villain, and I think if she gotten Ben out, I don't really know what would have happened. I don't think anyone really does, but she would have had a good chance at the million, and she got votes against Ben anyways. And I think she has been like itching for a return. I think she's a very good like returnee, especially on this cast. This is honestly a really good cast for her with like a lot of people around her age. And like I think if this season could very easily fall into like a very loyalty like kind of Joe style of gameplay was how many people are like that on the season. I think Chrissy could easily slide in on that as she's as physical as them. But I do like the idea of her not knowing fire. I think a lot of these people, it'd be really fun for them to go in the fire, honestly. Like, see Rick and Suri go, like, in this moment of like they both lost the game because of fire. Stuff like that would be fun. But I do really like Chrissy. She's a good confessionalist too, which I think is underrated. So, but we have arguably one of the best confessionalists in recent history. We have Angelina.
Oh yeah.
What do you think of the jacket queen herself, rice negotiator, absolute stud,
I mean,
ladder?
this is probably the player that people were claiming for the most out of anyone. And she's back, so we're so happy to see Angelina back on our screens. I think she's going to just provide immense amount of entertainment, every shape and form. I hope that we get her for a long time over the course of the season, so that we can just have more of those shenanigans with her. So I'm really excited for Angelina.
Oh, I completely agree. I'm very excited for Angelina. I think she's so funny on David versus Goliath, and I also think she's like probably a better player than like I would give her credit for. Like a lot of the strategies that Tony used in Winners of War, like Angelina was the original person for a lot of that. Like him being like, "Oh, I fell out of a tree looking for an idol, but I hurt myself," so everyone like gave him sympathy. That was from Angelina. Like it's really goofy stuff, but like it works. And I'm so excited for her. I'm excited for her as she's with like a lot of people like we'll get to that. I'm like, hey, you guys were a duo, probably one of the most underrated duos coming into this game.
Which
And
is Mike White, we can also talk about.
yes, yes, let's get into Mike Wyatt. What are your thoughts on Mike?
I mean, this is going to be probably the most recognizable person for casual viewers with the success of the White Lotus in the last few years.
Mm.
Been a highly successful show. I think, you know, I feel like Jeff had a lot of influence on the cast. We have, three on fire people, including like Devins, and D and Charlie. And then we also have Mike, which is someone that Jeff's gone to a lot for advice on the show. Um, and I just think he's one of those people that, he's a great confessional giver.
Oh
You
yeah.
probably had a really good chance to win David versus Goliath if it wasn't for just kind of him being already successful. I don't think there people are going to let him get to the end for that reason, and also just for the fact that he is such a big threat coming into the game. Because he's also a good game player. He's played well a good game in David versus
Oh yeah.
Goliath. And so him and Angelina together again, that's gonna be so much fun. And with a third member from David versus Goliath and Christian Hubicki, Christian's also one of those heavy hitters, knock it out of the park cast members. Um, what are your thoughts on Christian coming back?
I think you can't have this season without Christian. I think he is like one of those like you had to get him. He is arguably the most popular person from the 30s. He's like such a fan favorite for casuals, for everyone. And I think he, like him being on Arch AP, really helps him and hurts him as he's interacted with a lot of these players. He was on White Lotus season 3 from what I can tell. Him and Angelina are friends. Him and Mike are good friends. Christian voted for Mike at the end over his good friend Nick, which we don't talk about Nick now. But he's like a very good player in his own right, where he's arguably one of the best social players ever, one of the most likable players ever, in the sense that he was so likable that he gets voted out, but not in the same way like Mitch was voted out. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it was like out of sheer like you are a threat because you are you sort of deal. And I think I'm honestly a little scared for Christian this season, where I think Mike White does have a deep run in him, solely due to like how he plays and the fact that he's so successful that people might bring him towards the end because they're not going to reward him the win. I do think Christian's kind of the opposite, where I'm like, yeah, you go to the end with Christian, like he has the case of beating nearly everyone on this cast out of sheer likability. He finds idols, he wins immunity, he's a great strategist, and I do think that like if he could get past this pre-merge, I think he could definitely take this whole thing.
I agree. Um, and then moving on from David versus Goliath, we have our last old school player in the Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah, Rick Devens coming back for season 50. I mean, clamor if Winners at War wasn't going to be an all-winner season, Rick Devens would have been on that cast 100%. You know,
Mhm.
Jeff wanted him to be, this, person that sold fire tokens to people, like this trader, and then the new era that got ultimately, told no by Mike White, which is
Oh,
really funny. But Rick Devens also first guest on Fire as well. He's done a podcast of his own with Dalton Ross, I believe. Um,
yes.
I forgot what it's called, but he does that. So is very much still within the Survivor community. He watches. He's keeping up to date. He's one of the best confessional givers that we've seen, and I think he'll be a lot of fun to bring back. He won immunities, found tons of idols, created made fake idols. Got his way all the way to where Chris Underwood beat him in fire making. Um, after returning back from the edge of extinction, mind you. So I think, Rick can play a really strong game coming back. I think, the heat will be a little bit, cool, turned down after we haven't seen him for 12 seasons. So I'm really excited to see Rick Devens back.
I am too. He was such a lock, a Jeff favorite. I think this season wouldn't have happened without Rick as well. I do think he's like in my like recent memory, he's like the jury threat, you know? Like he would have been everyone on the cast, and I think specifically he's so good at like sh kind of showboating, but not in like a Hubert way, I guess. Like he doesn't do it pridefully, but he's like putting on a show with like idols and everything, winning immunities, being like Lacheserie, like what does that even mean? And I think Rick is honestly in a pretty solid spot here, where like I think coming in, most people know who Rick is. He's recent enough. Like same with like pretty much everyone at this point. They've seen these seasons. But I don't think everyone's looking at him as like a strategic threat. They're looking at him as like, oh, he's an idle and physical threat, which I do think Rick has a pretty decent strategic mind that if he's not playing from the bottom, I think he could do really well in the top.
I agree. And moving on to the new era side of things, we have a singular representation from seasons 41 through 44, which is insane on the face of it. Who knows? Are we going to have any 41, 42, and 44, or 41, 43, and 44 players ever return? Like, I hope we get a new era All-Star season very soon. Um, I have no idea if that's the case or not. But we have Jonathan Young here from season 42, who's I don't know how I feel about Jonathan being on this cast. I mean, obviously he's an insane, physical beast, challenge beast. It's super fun to watch from the challenge side of things. And he will help his tribe no matter what tribe he's on, do
Mhm.
really well, I think. Um, gameplay wise, I think it's a little lackluster. We'll see what he brings to the table there. But I do think it's good to have some of these people that are, very physical players. We have some of these people that are pretty strictly entertainment people. We have also some very, strategic powerhouses as well. So I think we kind of have the wide range of Survivor players. And Jonathan's one of those. And I think, we'll see him dominate a lot of challenges again. Hopefully we can see him improve his game and, begin to make smart strategic decisions amidst this cast of legends and, new school legends as well. So we'll see what happens.
I agree. And I remember watching 42 and really liking Jonathan. I felt like he was a new breed of like an Ozzy or a Colby, like these people where he really did push a lot of the strategy of the season. He was the one that came together, was like, let's make this huge alliance of threats. And he used that to move forward. And I think one thing that a lot of the super fan community knows is that like he was the one who initially gave Marianne the plan of pulling the 2-2-2. But he was like, hey, like it'd be dumb of like Lindsay and Omer not to use the idol. So let's not do that. And of course, they didn't use the idol. Marianne votes out Omer. And I think like that gives me a lot of faith in Jonathan that he has it in him. Like the move of the season was originally his idea. And I do think that he's a more strategic threat than what we think. Now, I think the one thing he really lacks is socially. I don't think he's like the best social player at all. But I do think moving forward that like he's done a lot of good work with like charities, especially like overseas and stuff, which is really cool. And I hope that like he's really kind of grown throughout this whole process and really looked at his game. Because if not, he might be an under threat to win. I mean, he's the biggest guy out there in a season of big guys, but I think there's a shot that he can go deep. But moving on to someone that I cannot believe is on this cast. Someone from 45. We have Flippin' Emily Flippin.
The
I can't believe it. Where
financial
she,
analyst herself.
the financial analyst, she said so many times she's not coming back. That liar, that freaking liar, that flippin' liar. I'll say my piece real quick. I'm so happy she's back. She was the main character of 45. And I do think if journeys don't happen, if Katura isn't sitting on her hands, I think that is a very different season. Where I think she was willing to take the shots at different points, but she would lose her vote, or Katura would lose her vote, and she just wouldn't have the capital to do it. And I think she has one of the most complete single season story arcs of all time. And with her being from a villain to hero, where everyone hated her that first episode, and now she's one of the most beloved new era players. She's in a good spot. I think she got seventh on her season, so she's not like seen as like this huge threat. And I'm like really happy she's on. But what do you think?
Me too. I'm glad Emily's on. She's really entertaining. She had like you said it all. Had a great growth arc in her season. I'm excited to see what she will do on a return. She's one of these, new era knocked it out of the park cast members. So I'm excited to see her play.
Oh, I'm so ready. Now
All
let's
right.
get into
A
like
winner.
a winner. Yes, a very controversial pick due to the fact that they're a winner. If not, it makes sense. A host of the On Fire podcast, we have D. What are your thoughts on D?
I figured like we've talked about this like even since 45 aired like that D would probably be, a lock for a returning season that included
Mhm.
winners just because of she just probably played one of the best games in the new era, probably my favorite, game in the new era. She's probably the best player of the whole new era. So, she from that perspective, it would be really great to see her play again and see if she can do anything to undermine her threat level at all. I think, her and Kyle are really screwed from the onset.
Yeah.
And because, it's her and Kyle there is what like the only two winners, I think, Camilla and Joe are also are in trouble just because of their relationship with Kyle too. So I think I'm curious to see how this shakes out. If, D is wanting to keep Kyle around so that they can be the two winners still in the game. I do think that they're not going to make it very far just because of that fact, though. But they could surprise me. We could have a two-time winner result from this season. Who knows? Uh,
That that would be crazy.
but D's super entertaining. I'm excited to see her play again. We'll see what happens.
I agree. I think this is a very interesting thing where no doubt in my head that D this is going to be the first time D has to play from the bottom. And I'm curious to see how she plays. I hope we get to see more of her personality where like yeah, she has a big toe and she liked Austin for a little bit or like used him. But we didn't really get much of like her personality or like because I follow her on Instagram and she's like very personable. She's actually very fun. And you didn't necessarily get that on the season as she was a more strategic threat and more of this Boston Rob style of player. And I do think that's very interesting on a season like this where she's clearly a villain. And I do like that she's a villain and a winner on the season, but man, her threat level is through the roof. For most people would agree she is the best player of the new era. And I don't see a world where people just aren't immediately after her as she can win challenges. She's one of the best well-rounded players as well. And I just don't know like exactly the like path forward for her, but I'm really happy she's back. She was itching to get back, especially like Jeff loves her. But let's get into the person I'm most excited for. My favorite player of the new era, one of my favorite players of all time. We have Q.
Oh yeah.
Caleb, please talk about Q.
You know, there's so much to be said about Q. He was the most entertaining person of season 46, most entertaining person of the new era as a whole. The shenanigans that Q would be on every single week were just so fun to talk about. And just see everyone's reaction to what he was up to. We had his hide and seek moments. We have his infamous, big mistake.
Big
Uh,
mistake. You
so
can
I
cancel Christmas.
cancel Christmas, Q skirt. We have all the fun things with Q. Um, he's just gonna be, an agent of chaos in this season, and I hope he brings that back. And that people don't really see him as big of a threat, to win just because of how much chaos he's creating. He's not really impacting the game very much, but I hope that we get to see him on our screens for a very long time during the season because, more Q will be more entertainment.
Hey, I'm gonna say this right now. If Q, there's no way it happens. But if Q somehow wins, this will easily be my favorite season. It cannot be a bad season.
It
It's
could
like
not be a bad season
charade.
if Q
It'd
wins.
be like you'd be like how did he do it? I think Q is arguably one of the most complex characters of the whole new era. With him like feeling a lot of guilt over losing stuff, like feeling guilt over like you know allies and different things. And I do think like him and Tiffany here is fun, but I think Q by himself, like Q foreshadowed his interaction with Aubrey him like it's gonna be so funny. He's gonna have so many quotes, and I do think he's gonna be a more like himself as he's like aware of himself. You know what I mean? And I do think that like he's a pretty good player. He just kind of messes himself up, which is why I probably don't think he's gonna win, but he might be my winner pick because I don't care. And I do think he's gonna do. I just want him to go far. Like I'm telling, even if Q got like second place, it'd be like an incredible season, and I'd be okay with that. But yes, let's move on. Let's move on to a person that was introduced to because of their relationship with Q, but someone who a lot of people are saying is a sleeper pick. We
I'd
have
say the
Tiffany.
what WTF pick of the season as well. There's
Yes.
always someone that's a WTF pick.
Yes. Why do you think Tiffany is on, and what do you think her trajectory might be?
I do think, Tiffany, I mean, Jeff alluded to it in his announcement of her being on the cast, like only related her to Q. Like, she was an ally with Q, and then she didn't trust Q. And that's kind of like was her introduction. I do think there's more to Tiffany outside of Q, and I think, in a new era All-Star season, she would have been a great pick for that. But for the season 50, like I feel like she's taking the spot of, some people that could have been more entertaining on our screens or, more strategic dynamic. I do think, because of the fact that, Tiffany's probably the most under like rated person on the season outside of the 49 players. I do think that she will be able to sneak through and play a good game, and I do think she has a chance to win.
I do as well. I don't think most people are going to be looking at her just because, like, even though she got like eighth, like, she's the lowest placing person. She went home with an idol in her pocket. And I think a lot of the reason she's here is to just beef with Q because I don't even think they're like friends outside of like the game. But I think they also really like the idea of like Q, Tiffany, and Kinsey like maybe like multiple winners out of that grouping. They really like those three. And I think Tiffany had a lot of strategic acumen. I think one of my favorite moments of I love 46, one of my favorite seasons of recent. Her having to deal with Banu begging on his knees is one of the funniest moments of the new era, if not of all Survivor, when she's like, "Get up." It's so funny. I think she's a great character. I do wish it was, I mean, if this was Caroline, like I think we'd all agree that that would be like more ideal. But I mean, Tiff is a decent pick, and I can't even be like too mad if this is like our WTF pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't be too mad either. And I think she could play really well. And I think she's in a prime position in this game because everyone will, underestimate her. And I think she can come in and play a strong game. But moving into our final 46 contestant, we have Charlie Davis.
Yes. Charlie Davis, the man, probably one of the closest people to ever winning and not winning by a sheer like logistical standpoint. One vote away. Number one ally didn't vote for him to win, which was so crazy. Played a very strategic game. Not the greatest character. I think he is a very good, probably a better straight man than he is like a character. Like him and his interactions with like Q was really funny. Like like he'd be like, "Am I the one who goes awry?" Great confessional. But I do think strategically he is so solid. I think he played one of the smoothest games of the new era. A game that where I think if some things change a little differently, he definitely wins. And I think going into the season, I assume he's going to be a lot of people's winner pick. Like he's not the even though he got second, I don't even think he's like the biggest threat in this in this grouping of new era, especially with winners. And I do think that Charlie does have a deep run in him. He probably just needs to have like better management of his number one. I guess there's not really much he has to change. He just kind of has to do it again with a harder cast. But yes, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Charlie's going to bring it. He was also the host of On Fire, so
Yeah, I was.
he has that going for him as well. He's also a lot of people were clamoring after that season finale of Charlie should have won. I think that was probably the most controversial like winning like season for Kinsey. And I think since maybe even like Michelle and Aubrey. So I
Yeah.
think um
Well, maybe Gabler, but
having that dynamic on the season as well, with him just being kind of the Rob goddess of the season, I think will provide an interesting dynamic, and also his dynamics with Q as well.
true.
Q went after Charlie a lot during the season, and I think we'll see Charlie potentially wanting to take out Q early, which wouldn't be fun, but
And a big mistake.
I do think Charlie can play a really good game. And he played a really good game in season 46. I think he can play a good game in season 50.
I completely agree. And let's talk about someone who I think I'm actually very excited to be back. I think one of another very complex character, participant in Operation Italy. We have Genevieve. What about
Queen.
Genevieve? But we, I think Genevieve is in a really good spot to win. I think she has a very good strategic mind with her taking out Kishan in the pre-merge. I do think she has a very bad timing issue. Um, but outside of that, it's like she's won immunities. Like she almost got out of the final five without an idol. Like she bluffed an idol and nearly got out of there. We're like, who knows what happens? But I think she's such a fun pick. We really got to see like the complexities of like the morality of the game, where she didn't really want to use her emotions, but like kind of Jeff said that she used them later on. So I'm very excited about her. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, Genevieve had the biggest chance to win in season 47 outside of Rachel
Hmm.
at that finale. So she's just gonna bring it no matter what. She played so hard. I think she'll play hard again. I'm really excited to see Genevieve.
I agree. I am curious why Andy or Rachel isn't on this cast.
I
Um,
would have rather seen, Andy and Rachel instead of some of these, 48 players or 49 players. Like even
I
that.
agree.
47's a lot better received as a season two. And Andy's one of those characters, like, how is he not? on the cast. Like I feel like Jeff loves Andy too. So that would have been really fun to have as well.
And it would have been fun just to see Rachel, the one person on the On Fire podcast that didn't get on. But I do think her and Genevieve's like rivalry is really fun, and specifically was like how different of players they are. But I don't know. But let's get into 48. We have talked so much about 48, but I say we just get the big one out of the way. We have Big Boy Joe coming back again after the monster edit we just saw of him. What do you think of Joe coming back?
It's hard for me to see Joe doing a lot differently in his game, but I'm curious to see what he will be like without Eva on the season.
I completely agree. I think he's going to try to find an Eva. I think there's chances that like he can win. I mean, like him and Jonathan are like made to be allies. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be stuff like that. I do think he is aware enough to change his game. Especially postseason, he seems to like recognize what he was doing wrong. Do I think he'll change it like to the drastic sense of like backstabbing people? I don't think so, but I do think that like he might get picked up into like a numbers game. I also think he's a better confessionalist than most people give him credit for. I think him like his faces are really funny if you look at him in the background. Like he's always just like, "What?" And he's always like kind of confused, and I do like him and Kyle's interactions a lot. I don't know if he has a winning trajectory at all, but I it makes sense. I don't think he gets the edit he gets if he's not on 50.
Right. Then we also have Camilla coming back.
Yes. Camilla, I mean, honestly, I like Camilla a lot. I don't know how I think she's gonna be like the hot like we gotta get her out pick where we just saw the edit give her a lot of credit in the Kyle Camilla relationship, even though I stand on this I stand on business. I think Kyle played better. Obviously he won, so I guess I'm right. But I do think Camilla is also in a spot where like coming into this, like you don't she could be such an easy boot. She's one of the best challenge like puzzle makers. Like I think she's really good at that. I don't know how she's gonna do because Kyle and Camilla they don't have their secret relationship. Everyone knows about it. So I hope we get like 18 million confessionals of like Kyle being like, me and Camilla are actually in a very public relationship and we need to keep it like that. And see if like they can just do that whole thing again. But I'm happy Camilla's here. I probably would rather see like someone else than her. But if it's in between her and Kyle, I probably would have rather seen. I don't know. I think you have to bring them back as a duo at this point.
Yeah, I just do think it's too soon. I would rather see
Mhm.
them in a couple years come back, but you know, regardless, I think it'll be an interesting dynamic. I think Kyle and Camilla are going to be the biggest threats coming into the season. They're the
Oh yeah,
freshest on the mind. We just saw them dominate the season, and so they're in a lot of trouble. I mean, we didn't really introduce Kyle yet, but Kyle's also one of these cast members. So him being on the season as well as one of the two winners playing probably the second best game, out of the new
I
era.
agree.
Um, we also have the two best winners in the new era, and his relationship with Camilla and Joe. He had a really tight relationship with Joe as well. I think, that's just going to be sirens for everyone on the cast. And I think it will just be really hard for them to stay in the game long. I do think if Kyle gets cut early, I think Camilla has the chance to grow and do a lot of different things. But I also can see Camilla being cut early in favor of, trying to minimize Kyle's threat.
I completely agree. They cannot be with each other. It would be detrimental to both of them. I do think like you say, I think Kyle's the best, like probably the second best winner. And I think like if you just like put Kyle naturally on there without like the winner status, like if Joe won and like he didn't, I'll be like, he's my winner pick. Like easily my winner pick. But like with the winner title on and coming in with his two number one allies, and I was thinking like, if D came in here with like Austin and Julie she'd be cooked. And especially Kyle, with like how good of a winner he is, like to the audience, we see him like subtly move everything. I mean, that they literally just saw him win like last week, and now they're going. Like, I don't, if he won this game, I'd be so shocked and so impressed. And I really like Kyle. I think the more I've thought about his game, the more I really, really like him. And I really want to put him high on my winner pick, but there's just no way.
I totally agree. And that's the cast outside of those, two season 49 players, which excited to
Which
see
is
them
us. That's
when we
right.
watch.
We're
Oh,
on 50.
yeah, spoiler
That's,
alert.
that's right.
Just kidding. But season 49, it's gonna be really fun to watch. And for the course of the off season, we're gonna take a little break for a few weeks, and once we get back, we'll start diving into some of these early seasons. We'll start with Borneo. I'm not sure how far we'll get before, season 49 starts, but we want to start going through chronologically, talking about some of these seasons. So excited to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And before we go, let's give our winner picks. Way too early winner
That's right. Our
picks.
way too early winter picks. I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me.
I got you. I got you. Okay, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Do you have one off already? Do you have one?
Here's the thing. I'll give one. I think we should give one for new school and old school. I think
Okay.
that's probably the best assessment of it. Okay, for old school, I have Angelina, which you might be thinking, oh, really? I think she's so comfortably put. And I think this season we're gonna kind of harken back to early new era where like characters make it to the end. And I do think the like bigger the threat you are, the easier you are to cut off. I think the characters are going to make it to the end of the game, and I think Angelina's not going to be respected at first, but she is going to eventually find that footing and like get to the end of the game. She might like get lucky, be with like a bunch of people that aren't respected, but I do think she has it in her to give a good game, and she had a really good final tribal. So I'm going to say Angelina. Also, I'm going to be honest. This is biased. I want Angelina to win. That would be so funny. And going off of bias, guess what? I don't care. Give me Q.
Give me Q.
That's right. It would be a big mistake if I didn't do it. I want Christmas. I want my presents. Don't cancel it. I want Q. I think there's actually a good shot if Q can like hone it in and just like not be Q, kind of like Tony-ish. You know what I mean?
Tony's when it's that war game is what Q needs to play.
Yeah, Tony, he just needs to watch that season on repeat and like learn. Because like I think Q's like in that spot where he could totally do it. And he's such a good talker. Everyone loves him. Even though he quits, like everyone still loves him as a person. That like if he can just somehow get past Tiffany and Aubrey and like all this people probably coming after him, I think he could do it. And I just want him to.
Yeah, me too. And then my picks, I would say my pre 40 picks. I'd say I'd Chrissy Hofbeck would be my winner pick from that era. I think, like I said before, she's in that perfect, middle of the pack. And I think she could play a good game. She has the ability to. We've seen it. And I think she could play a really good game. And I'd be excited to see that. And then for my new era pick, I'm gonna go with Genevieve because I think she's just a great player, and I think she can tone it down a little bit, work on her timing, improve from her mistakes. And I think there's just so many priority threats in her way before they even, turn to Genevieve. I think by the time they say, "Oh, Genevieve's a huge threat," she's already gonna be cruising. So.
Oh yeah. Well, there you go.
There we go. That's the season 50 cast. Really excited to see how that shakes out. If we get any more news about the season as a whole, how they're going to be structuring it with the episodes and the days and everything like that. So stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. And stay tuned for our off-season content here in a few weeks, taking a few weeks off, just to enjoy the summer a bit. But when we get back, we'll be back with some more content for you guys. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. We'll check you out later. See ya.